got caught using dating sites. He found subscription charges on the credit card statements. Then, if anyone had told me that the subscription charges from the dating sites I used would be the biggest evidence of me cheating on my husband, I would have called that person a psycho. Hi Reddit, my name is Amber. I am a 29-year-old entrepreneur and makeup artist. My husband's name is Samuel, Sammy for short. He is a 31-year-old real estate agent. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. We met in a restaurant on a rainy Saturday. Guys, it's a long story and I wouldn't want to bore you all with it. Right now, I'm in a lot of mess. I have been crying and wallowing in self-pity for a week now. My husband has chased me out of the house and we are in the process of getting a divorce. Yes, guys, a divorce. I cheated on him with a guy I met on a dating site and he didn't take it easy on me. I'm trying all my best to see that Sammy doesn't get to divorce me. If that happens, then guys, I'm finished. I would be left with nothing. My whole life is crumbling right in front of me and I don't know what to do. It's no one's fault but mine. I tried going on a date app, not with the intention of looking for a partner, but to see how it works. I know this sounds crazy and absurd, but that's just the bitter truth. Please don't get me wrong, guys. I have seen a lot of posts about dating sites on social media, and I thought of creating an account to see how it works. Honestly, guys, I didn't have the intention of looking for any guy to mingle with because Sammy and I weren't on bad terms. We were cool and everything was fine between us. In fact, he gave me the attention I needed and provided everything a husband would do for his wife. To some extent, guys, I could say I wasn't lacking anything and was living a stress-free life because Sammy looked out for me. When my husband got to know about my infidelity, he didn't take it lightly. His revenge hurts. Even now, as I write this, I can't stop crying. My husband really dealt with me. I deserve it. I shouldn't have cheated on him after being a somewhat perfect husband to me. The fact that I cheated on him with a guy I met on the dating sites made him more furious and unleashed his anger on me. He kicked me out of the house in the middle of the night and ordered the gatekeeper not to let me out of the gate. Sammy made me spend the night outside in the cold. It was so cold that night. Guys, I didn't even put on something good except for my nightwear. The cold and the mosquitoes really dealt with me that night. The next day, Sammy came to me and asked me to tell him who my affair partner was. Of course I didn't tell him, but he eventually got to know by tricking him to come over to the house, which was our usual hanging out spot whenever Sammy wasn't around. Sammy invited my affair partner, Bob, over under the pretense of us having dinner together. Bob fell for the trap and didn't know what he was about to get himself into. My husband used my account to chat him up and he agreed to come over. My husband seized all my phone gadgets and even ripped me off of everything that was mine. Guys, I have read some of the stories here on Reddit, how husbands light their cheating wife's belongings into flames. But mine wasn't like that. Instead, Sammy packed all my dresses and footwears and gave it all out to charity. He didn't only give my clothes out, my husband also emptied my credit cards and donated the money to charity also. I watched him do all of these things, and I couldn't do anything about it. It's been a week since he kicked me out of the house, and I haven't heard anything from him. The divorce papers are taking longer to be ready. I've been praying that Sammy would get to have a change of mind and not go through with the divorce. I really missed my husband, and I hope he gets to forgive me and accept me back. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm ready to rewrite all wrongs. He can do whatever he wants just to get back at me, but not divorcing me. I have invested my life, time, and everything in this marriage that I don't want to get a divorce. I know I've hurt my husband badly, and his anger is justified. But nevertheless, we can still work things through and be the perfect couples we have always been. Honestly, guys, I really missed my husband, Sammy. Guys, not to beat around the bush, I will get to what actually happened and how it started. No one introduced me to the dating app, and I wasn't advised by anyone to cheat on my husband. So I owe no one responsible for my infidelity rather than myself. I messed my marriage up myself. I got to know about this particular dating app on the internet. A lot of people were talking about it, and I decided to open an account to see how it works. I opened an anonymous account so as to not get caught by anyone I know because that I would have told my husband and he would get the wrong impression. I didn't need all that drama, and so I tried to avoid it. But the mistake I made was using our joint credit cards to link up the monthly payment. When I first logged in the account, it was somehow boring. I thought it would be all fun like how they portrayed it to be, but it wasn't, and so I left it idle for a month. I got caught up with work and didn't remember I had an account, not until I got a pop-up notification of being paired with someone. I got curious, and that was how I logged in after a month of leaving it idle. Guys, it was there I got to meet Bob, my affair partner. The site paired us together. Bob was the first to send me a message. On seeing the message, I wouldn't lie to you guys. I got anxious. I read the message and didn't reply, not until Bob sent another message. At that time I replied, and that was the beginning of an affair that cost me my whole property and marriage. From replying to an armless message to what turned into a full-blown affair. Bob chatted a lot. At that time, Bob was a single bachelor. His main aim of opening an account was looking for a partner. I hid my marital status from him when we both started to chat. But at some point I told him about it, and he was comfortable with it. We spent the first 3 weeks chatting. He didn't know who I was. On several occasions I turned his request to me sending him my picture for him to see. During that period, I also told Bob my main reason for opening the account and had no intention of looking for a partner. He understood me at that time, but still insisted on seeing my picture. After a month of chatting and his constant request for a picture, I finally gave in and sent it to him. Guys, that was how Bob and I started dating online. Our late-night chats intensified. We could spend hours chatting on the phone telling each other most everything about our day. At some point, I wasn't concentrating on my makeup job because Bob and I could spend time on the phone chatting. Most of my clients often got irritated because I wasn't concentrating and would spend longer time doing something that requires a few minutes to be done. Sammy also noticed my change in behavior and asked me if everything was okay, but I told him everything was fine with me. My husband isn't a businessman that doesn't have time to be at home. His work isn't that cumbersome, and he was mostly at home. The few times Bob and I spent together at our house was because Sammy was called for a job. Anytime my husband is being called for any job, it would take much of his time, and so Bob and I used that opportunity to spend time together at my place. Bob and I dated online for a few weeks before we finally got to meet each other in person. We met at a restaurant in the afternoon to have lunch together, which was picked out by me. I made sure it wasn't a nearby restaurant that Sammy usually visits, or anyone that knew my husband and I. The restaurant was a little bit far away from the main town. Bob was good-looking in person, and my likeness for him tripped. He was handsome and good-looking. Of course, Sammy, my husband, was also good-looking. Bob and I first meeting was a little bit awkward. I was anxious and at the same time scared. I didn't know what was wrong with me at that time. I knew that there was no way Sammy would come to that restaurant then. But I was uneasy and kept looking around to see if I knew anyone. But I didn't find any. Bob understood my plight and assured me not to worry about anything. Bob and I placed some orders, and we are. The restaurant was nice, and their meals were top-notch. They made some interesting intercontinental dishes, and Bob and I didn't waste time in trying all of them out. After we had lunch, we went to see some amazing artwork at a gallery and spent time together there. Bob was really fun to be with, and I enjoyed spending time with him then. It was all shades of fun and vibes any time with him. We both went home after our first hangout. Yes, guys, nothing really happened between us. Not until our second hangout, and this time it was at a club. Sammy wasn't around that Friday. He went on a tour with his brother who was trying to open up a business. The tour lasted for 3 days, and so I decided to go clubbing with Bob, and also ease out some stress. At the club, I got to meet a few friends of Bob. Most of the people that came that night seemed to know Bob somehow. Bob later told me he usually comes there every Friday, and he had grown a relationship with most of the people. Bob introduced me as his girlfriend, and I was treated warmly. We even got free drinks just to celebrate my arrival. The atmosphere was nice and lovely. We had not just a few shots, but lots of it. Bob and I also played games with his friends and had a couple of dances together. The night was amazing, and we both really enjoyed ourselves. At some point we got tired and left the arena. We went over to Bob's house to spend the night together. At that time, Bob and I weren't intoxicated. We both knew how to handle our liquor. Our making out that night wasn't based on alcohol. In fact, I was fully aware of what I was doing, but couldn't stop myself because I needed it at that moment. Maybe just to end the night that day. The next morning, guys, I couldn't believe what I did. The thought of me just cheated on my husband dawned on me, and I kept thinking about it. I turned to the other side of the bed and saw Bob still sleeping. At that moment, the guilt left me, and I kept on staring at him while he slept. A few minutes later, he woke up and caught me staring at him, and just then, Bob pulled me over, and guys, we made out that morning. After a few minutes, we got out of the bed and ate something that morning. I left immediately, and we had breakfast because I had an appointment with a client. But guys, at that time, I couldn't stay a few minutes without seeing Bob. I managed to control myself anytime my husband was around. But anytime he isn't, I want to spend more time with Bob. Honestly, guys, at some point, I became so obsessed with him. Right now, thinking back, I'm so ashamed of myself. I knew at that time what I was doing was wrong, but I got too carried away and couldn't stop myself. My husband getting to know about my infidelity was like me being woken up from a dream. At some point, I wanted to end things with Bob, but I couldn't. Rather, I kept on calling, texting, and visiting him at his place. During the time Bob and I were dating, my husband and I were on good terms. Things were normal between us. It was like I was double dating. Or should I say I was two-timing two grown men? Just that one knew about it and the other was left in the dark. The one that was left in the dark was my husband. Not in his wildest dream would he have thought that I would one day cheat on him. I myself didn't know I would. If anyone had told me about it a few years ago, I would have called that person crazy. Most of our friends looked up to Sammy and I as role models in terms of marriage. This was how Sammy treated me, and we were a great and perfect match together. As young couples we spent time together and even delayed having kids. Our intention was to enjoy ourselves and also birth kids anytime we were mentally, emotionally, and physically prepared. As a couple, we weren't too busy with work, but we wanted to do it at our time, not even minding the pressure that was coming from our families, most especially Sammy's family. All in all, Sammy and I stood by each other and didn't give in to all the tantrums thrown at us, especially me from his family. They thought I had a problem conceiving, but didn't know that it was a mutual agreement between us. Thinking about this right now, I should have not even gone down the route I took. Without being told, I know that I have deeply hurt my husband. He didn't deserve what I did to him after standing up for me on several occasions. Honestly, guys, I regretted opening that dating site. I shouldn't have even opened it to see how it even works in the first place. This has cost me so much, and I have no choice but to pay the price. So guys, my affair with Bob went on for months. I got so carried away that I didn't remember to change the credit card bill to mine, and my husband eventually found out because he kept receiving a lot of subscription charges for the dating sites on his phone. I used our joint credit card to subscribe to it. I got a lot of confrontations from my husband about my infidelity, but I denied them all. I didn't know that he knew about it because of the monthly debits he kept on receiving. When I noticed that my husband was beginning to suspect me, I quickly deleted all my chats and text messages with Bob, and I was overprotective of my phone. But guys, that didn't work, or should I say it was already late by then? Because at that time my husband had evidence but wanted to catch me red-handed. And so, he kept a closer look on me and monitored my every movement. On this fateful day, Bob and I planned on meeting together at his house. My husband was around at that time. I gave him the excuse of meeting up with a client at my studio for work, and so I drove out. But guess what, guys? My husband followed me to Bob's house. I didn't know not until that night when Sammy narrated how he caught me and showed me evidence. So guys, as at the time I arrived, Bob was standing waiting for me. I got down from the car and we hugged, not minding who was watching us. We went inside and spent the day together. That day, I left Bob's house at 10 p.m. On reaching home, I didn't meet my husband. I concluded that he had gone out with his friends, and so I was happy I won't have to answer why I was coming home by that time. So guys, I went to freshen up and changed into my nightwear and had dinner. A few minutes later, my husband came in looking so furious. I thought maybe his night didn't go well and wanted to ask him if everything was okay. Before I could say anything, I got a hot slap on my cheeks, which made me fall on the ground. Guys, you all wouldn't believe it. My husband showed me pictures of me and Bob hugging at his front porch. Not only that, my husband showed me all the subscription charges he always gets on his phone. Sammy was so furious to the extent that he punched the wall and a hole dug out. I was so scared and was shivering at the sight of that. I couldn't look my husband in the face. Sammy pulled me by my arm and kicked me out of the house and made me sleep outside in the cold. I kept on knocking and begging him to open up, but he refused. I had no choice but to spend the night outside. The next day, my husband wanted to know who he was and what his name was. But I didn't answer, and he thought of what he could do, and so he used my phone to invite Bob over for dinner. Bob thought I was the one and fell for the trap. Bob came all dressed and was happy thinking he was coming to see me. My husband opened the door, and Bob was surprised to see Sammy. Immediately, Bob got so sober and wanted to run, but my husband was smart enough to pull him by the collar and give him a heavy punch on the face. For the first time ever, I saw my husband fighting. I watched two grown men in a heated fight. My husband gave Bob the beating of his life. After my husband had given Bob enough beating, he kicked him out. Bob left the house with a bleeding nose and lots of bruises on his body. My husband turned to me and thought of what to do with me. After a while, he dragged me out of the house. I began pleading for forgiveness, but he ignored me and threw me out. I was on the street with only my nightwear. Bob, on the other hand, cut all ties with me. The next day, I went over to plead with Sammy again. But at that time, he had already packed all my belongings. I thought he wanted to set them on fire, and so I quickly picked a dress before he could come out. When Sammy came out, he threw my things in the boot and collected the one I had picked and told me he was going to give them all for charity. My eyes became wide open and begged him not to, that I will not have anything to put on except my nightwear I was on. Sammy looked at me and told me he didn't care what I was going to put on from now on. He refused and got into the car. Right there in my eyes, my husband drove off to a charity organization and gave all my clothes to them and donated my life savings to them. My head was spinning. The thought of losing my valuables and money made me furious. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was so angry at myself for bringing it upon myself. My husband showed me no mercy. Sammy took the revenge thing so personally. He knew setting my clothes up would be pointless. Rather, he gave it out to the less privileged and tripped me off with no clothes. 2 days later, Sammy filed for a divorce. I didn't stop begging him. Guys, you all wouldn't believe it. My husband not only filed for a divorce, he also filed for a restraining order for invasion of privacy. Sammy restricted me from coming to the house we both shared. Not in my wildest dream would I have thought that Sammy could do that to me. I was hurt and kept crying whenever I remember that. Update. Hey Reddit. It's been a while since I was here. I have been reading all the comments and I appreciate them all. Most especially the negative and nasty comments. Guys, trust me, I deserve each of those comments. I shouldn't have let my guard down and cheat on someone that was there for me and made sure I was comfortable. He made being a wife easy for me and regret ever cheating on him. I won't lie, guys. My life is a mess right now. I don't even know what to do or where to go from here. My husband and I have both signed the divorce papers. All my efforts in trying to make him change his mind went void. He gave me a deaf ear and did what was on his mind. Right now, I am left with nothing. I didn't gain anything out of the divorce. I couldn't even hire a lawyer because I had no penny to afford one. Sammy left me penniless. Right now, I have no clothes to put on. The only clothes I have is the nightwear I wore when Sammy threw me out and gave the rest out for charity. I'm not happy, guys. I hate myself right now. I could barely eat a proper meal. I can't even step out because I have no clothes to wear. The only 2 clothings I have are my nightwear and a dress. I can't even take care of myself like I used to. Sammy really did me dirty. He taught me a lesson that I would never forget in my life. I have tested both luxury and hardship. Right now, I can say that it's now I understand the saying that says you can never know the value of something until you lose it. Yes, guys, I didn't know the value of what comfort is until I lost it. Within a few seconds, my comfort was taken away from me, and I am left with nothing. Sammy gave me all the comfort I needed, and honestly, guys, I don't think anyone would treat me like the way Sammy did. I practically lacked nothing. We both depended on his own salary, considering the fact that I was self-employed and was earning some pennies. I saved up all the pennies I had in my account and never used it for anything because Sammy pampered me. He gives me money for anything I want. Mine was just saved up without any intention of using it. But in order to get back at me, my husband swapped all my life savings and donated it to charity. Now I'm literally back to square one. I really messed up big time.